In today's video, I'm going to walk you through a case study that shows how some clients were able to reduce the amount of taxes they'd pay in retirement by over $500,000. We'll go through how we could take them from being in the 25% tax bracket for the majority of their retirement to the 0% tax bracket for the majority of the retirement. We'll walk through the tax strategy we use and why they found this so appealing for their retirement goals. So this couple was like a lot of people that we help, right? They had been really good savers. They had saved over $1 million for retirement. Their spending was very reasonable. They live in Kansas, so pretty low cost of living. But what they realized was they had saved all their money into tax-deferred retirement accounts, meaning 401ks, traditional IRAs, 403bs for some of you, 457s. Either way, they were tax-deferred. And they were starting to realize that, hey, we've got all this money saved. We have over $1 million, but we haven't paid tax on it yet. And so as we start to pull this money out, we're going to have a really big tax issue. They also, because their spending was pretty reasonable, knew that with their Social Security and their spending, they weren't going to have to be taking that much money out of their retirement accounts early in retirement in their 60s. And so they knew that was going to create what we call a tax bomb when they hit 73 or 75, the required minimum distribution for each of them, where they're starting to be required to take money out of those retirement accounts. And so they wanted to get ahead of this. They wanted to do what we call proactive tax planning, which was utilizing strategies early in retirement to reduce taxes later in retirement, right? And so in today's video, we'll walk through exactly how we did that. We'll go through the strategy we used and how it impacted their overall tax situation for themselves, but also how it may save their kids money in taxes well into the future when they start to inherit this money. And by the way, if you are new here, my name is Ryan. I'm the founder of Denali Financial Group, and who we help are exactly the people we're going to talk about today, right? People that have saved really well, have over $1 million in savings, but they're just trying to figure out how they can efficiently retire while also reducing the amount of taxes they may pay. And they also want to make sure that their investments, their income strategy is all as efficient as possible as well. We use a retirement planning process. We call it the Mint for More retirement method. And by the way, if you're curious on what retirement may look like for you, there's a couple quizzes you can go down below and take. One is just simply how much do I need to retire quiz, or the other one is what we call the Mint for More score. It walks you through a few questions that just gives you an idea of if you're getting the proper planning for your current retirement. So go below, take those quizzes. But let's go ahead, let's jump into today's case study. Okay, so let's jump into this plan real quick. We're going to be looking at, we're going to call them Gary and Karen. By the way, Gary is 62 years old. He's retiring in 2025 at 63. Karen is only 59, and she does not want to retire yet. She really enjoys her job. She just doesn't think she's ready for retirement. So she's actually going to plan on working until at least 63, potentially all the way until 65, but we're going to assume she retires at 63. You'll see here their net worth's $2.2 million, but their investments are 1.5. So they also have a home that is paid off. It's worth over $600,000. That's a big reason why they're in such a good spot when it comes to expenses, is because all of their debt is paid off. They're in a really good spot. They've got $1.5 million invested, but as I said, that is almost primarily in 401ks, 403bs, and also Gary is getting a lump sum of over $300,000 instead of opting to take a pension because they don't need the extra income that much because one, Karen is working the next few years, and two, their expenses just aren't with their Social Security. They're really going to have a good chunk of their expenses covered just through that once Karen does retire. So let's jump in. Let's take a look at their expenses here. So they spend about $65,000 a year in just their base level living expenses. This is their everyday expenses, but they like to travel a lot, right? And this is part of the reason Gary's retiring is Karen's job's much more flexible. She's able to work remote, so they want to spend a lot on travel over the next 10, really, as long as they can, right? So we're building in a travel budget of $35,000 per year. So this is what their expenses looks like. All right, so now let's take a look at their income. So like I mentioned, Gary is planning to retire here in 2025. So he's only getting a few months of his salary, not going to be a whole lot in 2025. Karen is going to continue working. She's making a really solid amount of $165,000 a year. And down here, you'll see their Social Security. We're going to start by just assuming they start at 65 and they're each receiving about $32,000 per year. So this is a good start. This is what everything looks like for them. But now let's jump into how this all looks in their plan. So let's start here by just looking at their plan from a base facts point of view. And what I mean by that is this is if they didn't make any changes. They just sat back, they were reactive, and they didn't implement any tax strategies to potentially get more efficient. So here's what things look like. One, as you'll see, their total tax bill over retirement is going to be $1.3 million. And that's a lot of money in taxes, right? And that is why they were here to see us, right? They knew they were going to have a problem. They didn't know how big of a problem, but as you'll see, $1.3 million, that's a lot of money in taxes that they're going to be spending. But the other thing to keep in mind here is their plan has a 99% probability of success. That's phenomenal. And they're also going to have $4.2 million left over if they live out to 95 and pass money on to their kids. And so this is a great looking plan. The tax strategy we're going to talk about isn't about taking their plan from working versus not working. Right? They're in a really good spot, but really what we're doing now is how do we just make this more efficient? How do we make sure more of their hard-earned money is going to them and their kids rather than to IRS, Uncle Sam, right? So how do we start to get more efficient with this? So let's take a look at how this may look. And so as you'll see, like their tax situation while she is still working, pretty high. They're in the 22-25% tax bracket. If we see tax rates go up, then she retires. It dips down a little bit, and then it dips down even more as they start Social Security. But then this is where they hit required minimum distribution age, and what they're seeing is their taxes are just forever going up until the end of their plan. That's what leads us to this issue of having $1.3 million in total taxes. These are RMDs. This is when they're required to start taking money out of those retirement accounts. And it's just, they didn't like the idea of this because when they looked, they said, we just forever are going to be paying more in taxes. And we also feel like tax rates are going to be going up in the future. So we don't like the idea of one, always paying more in taxes, and two, potentially paying more when tax rates are higher than they are right now. So that's where we start to look at what a proactive tax strategy looks like. Okay, so here's an example of a proactive tax plan. This is our Mint for More retirement method. This is where our team, our CFPs, our CPAs, they went in and they built out a tax strategy for the long term, right? This isn't all about saving money in the current year. This is about how can we save money out over the next 20 to 30 years. And so what you're seeing here is these yellow bars are what we call Roth conversions, but we call these incremental Roth conversions because what we're doing here is we're taking money from that tax-deferred retirement account and we're converting it over to a Roth IRA. And a Roth IRA is a tax-free retirement bucket that's growing tax-free, and when you eventually take money out for income in retirement, it's going to come out tax-free. And so when we make these conversions, when we move money from this bucket over to this bucket, we've got to pay tax on it, right? So those yellow bars you'll see are actually them voluntarily signing up to pay more in taxes early in retirement. It's actually going to be from 2025, 1, 2, 3. It's going to be all the way out to 2034. So basically 9-10 year strategy here of converting money. But why we're doing that is because we want to maximize the tax bracket that Gary and Karen are in today. So if they are in the 22% tax bracket right now, and we think that that may be going up in the future, like let's say we know that potentially that's going to be the 25 in 2026, but if the Trump tax cuts get extended out to 2031 or whenever, that could be 5 more years. But either way, if we can maximize the 22% tax bracket now, rather than waiting until we don't know where that bracket's going to be down the road, we may want to do that. So let's look at what that does. So this would be a Roth conversion, a pretty aggressive Roth conversion, I would say. So while Karen is still working, we're going to be doing an $88,000 Roth conversion, and we're going to do that a few more years. $72,000 the next year, $77,000 the next year, but then she's going to retire, and these Roth conversions are going to get even bigger, right? So now that's a $121,000 conversion, that's a $124,000 conversion, and so on, right? But by doing this, what we're doing is we're paying tax ahead of time, yes, but the goal is, can we reduce our taxes over the long haul of retirement? And so that's where we come down here and we look at this. And so if you remember at the last page, without doing anything, they were going to be spending over $1 million in taxes over the course of their retirement plan if they lived out into their 90s. But now they're only going to be, well, I say only, but they're still going to be spending $765,000 in taxes, but that's $557,000 less dollars than they would have had they done nothing. Oh, and by the way, they're also going to actually see $500,000 more dollars in their plan, right? So $500,000 more dollars is going to be going to their kids when they pass away. So why this is such an appealing tax strategy is this right here. So this is a tax report. And over here on the left side, you're seeing the base facts. Again, that's if we didn't do anything. And as you'll see, their total income tax throughout time it's pretty low in their 60s, right? So 16, 17, after Karen retires, 11, 12, like it's looking pretty good. But then once they both start taking RMDs, it's where we get to that point where it's forever going up, right? And they're basically going to be living in the 25% tax bracket for the rest of their retirement. Whereas if we come over here, we look at this advanced plan where we implemented that 10-year incremental Roth conversion strategy, they're paying more ahead of time, right? But then they hit a point, they hit that sweet spot of when they're at 73 and 70, they've now converted everything to Roth. And so now they're paying $0 in taxes for the rest of their life if they continue to live the lifestyle that they are living, and if they were to implement that strategy over the course of time. So this is where it comes down to, there's never a perfect situation because they do have to pay taxes up front, but they really felt strongly that tax rates were going to be higher in the future, and so do I with the national debt and changes we may see coming. I think it's very likely we're going to see taxes be higher in the future. And if we know that they're going to have RMDs here in the future, well, I'd rather them pay a little more taxes now at potentially the 22% bracket or the 25 now, instead of what could be the 28, the 30, whatever that may be. It's going to allow them to leave more tax-free money to their kids. So let's take a look at how this impacts their estate plan, their legacy that they're leaving to their kids. Here is an example of if they did nothing, we go back to that base facts plan, their kids are still going to inherit a very good amount of money, right? Nobody's feeling bad for them, but they would have to pay $644,000 in taxes. And their concern with that was their kids are all pretty successful, meaning they may be, by the time Gary and Karen pass away, their kids may be well into the 30+% tax bracket. And so they didn't want to have to think about the fact that the money they're leaving behind is getting taxed at 35%, right? So instead, if we do that tax plan that we just looked at, that tax strategy, their kids would inherit $6.4 million and they would pay $0 in taxes. So they're saving $644,000 in taxes, and they're also coming out ahead with more money because of the tax-free growth that they were getting on that Roth IRA as they were converting money. So this is just the power of tax planning, being proactive. It's not always going to look this perfect, right? To me, like, this was a really awesome opportunity for them to
because of the age they were seeing us, right? They were in their early 60s rather than their late 60s. They had a lot more time to do a conversion strategy like this. But either way, there's always opportunities. Whether you're 65, 67, 68, doesn't matter. If you can start to convert money ahead of time, depending on your income situation, your tax situation, and your goals, then you should definitely be looking into it. So if you haven't had a chance to look at your overall financial plan to see how a tax plan like this may help you, go below, take the quiz, see if there's any way that we could help you out, or just go set up time on my calendar to set up a 30-minute call, an intro call, just to see if you may be a fit to walk through an exercise like this where we build out a financial plan and see if we could help you in your retirement journey. So that is it for today's video. Thank you guys very much for watching. Please subscribe if you can, like the video, and if you think of anyone that may benefit from this, share the video as well. So thank you again, and we will see you again soon.